Celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. Hey, Kim, how are you? How you doing? Long time no see.
I'm great. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you. It's great to see you. You look wonderful.
Likewise.
You. I want to thank you so much for being the first guest on this podcast that we're launching. And
thank you. It's my honor and privilege to be here. So thank you.
When we were coming up with the list of who we wanted to have on the podcast, I was thinking to myself, like, who are, some of the baddest ass entrepreneurs that we know. And you were at the top of the list.
Wow.
So
no pressure.
No pressure. No, just a conversation. The whole concept was, could we create a podcast that, kind of troubled with, I think some of, the influencers out there today for youth, or, anywhere 18 to 40, if you call that youth. But, there's a difficulty with influencers, and then, we were looking at some, when I say we, my wife and I were just watching some biographies, and, you watch biographies of, some famous people, rich people, whatever, The Rock, or if it's in business, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, et cetera, et cetera. And it's, so many people delete and distort the things that they hear, and it's easy. And I found myself, listening to these guys and making excuses for myself because, oh, wow, they've got $1 billion. They've got this big net worth, this organization, they do different things than I, and then it just got me to thinking about, like, hey, how can we put together some content for people who are grinding it out every single day in not just business, their career, their relationships, their life, their personal health, their emotional states, and how could we put together content that would represent the people who are just doing it every single day at, a level that's, I'll call it realistic. Mm-hmm. And so we just started formulating names, and just, you were at the top of the list. And so I wanted to just spend some time with you and kind of see what's up and where you're at and what you're doing. And so that was the thing. So thank you. Appreciate you being here. What's going on with your life? How's life in Australia?
Life in Australia is awesome. It's summertime over here, best time of the year. So the sun is shining, the birds are singing, and most importantly, the surf's up. So
yeah, nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome. What's going on with your life? Fill me in.
Well, right now, I have been grounded for a couple of years, as has, I think, the rest of the world. And this period of time, actually, for me, has come as a blessing and a curse all at once. But I'm seeing more of the blessing than the curse. As you know, I've normally on the road, traveling here, there, and everywhere, wherever life takes me. But I've definitely got a lot from stillness, being grounded. And I think looking at life, business, intellect, connections, all from a different lens and a different perspective, which I don't think that would have happened had COVID not created the boundaries of not being able to move and move freely as my life was accustomed to. So yeah, loads of lessons, loads of new opportunities actually have come from that. And for me, I think a lot of clarity has come from being able to sit in stillness. And yeah, it's really opened up just a new channel of perspective for me. So I'm actually really excited about what the year ahead is going to bring, because I feel like now I've had that time to ground. to get clarity, but now I think it's sort of moving into the implementation side of things. So loads of opportunities for me happening in the trading space, and that has come not from actual trades itself, but I think from the exploration of understanding the market from a different perspective, which COVID, I think, has brought me. So I'm really excited about that. Doing some collaborations with some friends I was sharing earlier, actually. Looking to run some partnerships with, I guess, people from different fields that I wouldn't normally have had the opportunity to. And I'm also just really kind of sitting with what's next. What's next in the journey and the evolution of Kim Burke. So that's me in a nutshell.
Well, I mean, so here's, if I just love to hear you put into perspective a little bit, because as you were talking, I was like, wow, I never really actually connected for you. And I don't think people probably would, not knowing you, would understand, like pre-COVID, you were traveling. I mean, every time we're talking to you, every time we connect, every time we see you either on social media, whatever, you're in some other country. What were you traveling? 2/3 of the year for several years before COVID?
Yeah, I would say definitely for a good 7 years. The longest period of time I spent in my home on the Gold Coast in Australia was 4 weeks. So, yeah, I mean, literally.
Sorry, 4 weeks in 7 years, or 4 weeks a year?
No, for the longest period of time I was at home in succession was 4 weeks in 7 years. So the rest of the time I was, at the time I thought I was having a ball, and I mean, I was having a ball, and you know, I learned so much and I grew and I evolved and the connections I developed, but I also realize now the toll that took, and probably too the lack of productivity that created, because the energy that it takes to get on an airplane, be in a new accommodation, you know, create meals and nutrition, and then work out, like all of those things, you're in a new environment every day. So you have to adapt to those circumstances. So yes, so I was on the go.
My day gets ruined if my breakfast isn't the same as the previous day. So no, I mean, I'm not that bad, but honestly, it's. I mean, when you hear that and you hear you talk about that, it's crazy. And we've traveled a lot, and so I do understand, you know, the energy that sucks up. Mm-hmm. And then so you do this for 7 years, but you get pretty accustomed to it, I'm sure. And then COVID hits, and then I'm thinking in my mind right now, like, you know, all these people who are, you know, think they're struggling with the shift in their life, you know, because their, you know, routine has been slightly upset that they're not going back and forth to work. Your whole life must have turned upside down.
Yeah, so I was the flip side of that. I actually had to find a routine. So the opposite for me was, you know, well, shit, I'm at home. You know, normally I come home to connect with my dog, change my suitcase, repack the suitcase, you know, get a new bunch of shoes or a new outfit or whatever it is, come back, go see my hairdresser, get my hair done, get my eyelashes done, my nails done. The key important things in life. Fly halfway around the world to come back and get your hair done. And then turn around. I can see you've got a great hairdresser. I'll have to get her number off you. So, and then turn around and go back again. And so for me, it's water off a duck's back to fly 16 hours home to change the suitcase, to be home for a week, and then get on a plane and fly again. So I actually really struggled with, what am I going to do with myself? Because a lot of my time was taken up in transit, you know, on planes, transiting, going from here to there. And so for me, you know, during COVID, I mean, I did all sorts of things. Like I learned to salsa. I got myself a pair of rollerblades again, you know, went out rollerblading, started doing all these things. I learned to e-foil. started getting back into hiking again, started cooking again, all of these different things. And it was very interesting to me where my mind and my intellect went, and then the natural progression of how that sort of impacted me on an intellectual, emotional, spiritual level, and then how that changed how I saw things in my business, and especially too because I'm a currency trader. One of the many things that I do, but primarily that also I was able to see things from a different perspective. So it was very intriguing to me as how much our environment, how much our routine, and the other thing that really has shifted in me, which I don't think we've had an opportunity to talk about, I used to, as you know, I used to be able to do 50 things on the go at once, whether it was, traveling, and I'd have multiple different business deals on the run or different opportunities. And what's happened for me during COVID, because I've spent so much time grounding, and I think I've spent more time sitting in silence, literally sitting on my back deck, looking up at the sky, not listening to music, not doing anything other than just sitting and being, which is a foreign terminology for me because I'm normally doing and going and doing and going. But what's happened as a result is I think my nervous system and the way my body produces dopamine has completely shifted. So now, if my day has more than 5 things to do in a day, which could include unloading the dishwasher, doing a load of washing, getting on a Zoom call, trading, I'm like, it's just like, I'm like, oh no, I can't do it, like too much. So it's interesting how, for me, I've noticed, especially also being a woman, I've also noticed the shift in my stress hormones in the sense of how much adrenaline, the fight or flight mechanism, and how much my body previously was overproducing that, and then the effects that had in so many other areas of my life. So one of the things I think that COVID has taught me about certainly being a female in business is that I can be so much more effective when I work focused and I work smarter, not necessarily harder. And that's been a really, like, if you ask me what one of my top 3 challenges over the last 3 years has been, it's been learning that, relearning or unprogramming that I don't need to be on the go for 10 hours a day. But because my body was so used to, okay, go, where's the next meeting? Where are we going to? What's the next deal? What's the next call I got to do? That was just this complete, it was like my body was making the changes, but my brain wasn't going in alignment with it. So that's been a really big shift for me.
Yeah, there wasn't a catch up to it. It's funny because I talked about influencers earlier, but you see all these people on social media who are like, you got to grind it, you got to fucking kill it, more discipline and look, I think there is a portion of that people are missing, but I also think that is overdone. And so I'm just curious if you could kind of speak to that transition, because you were, many people would describe you as like living this chaotic, like crazy, adventurous, insane life. And then it's, brakes get put on. So I'm sure there was some real adjustments, both emotionally, psychologically, physically in that whole process. But then, you get there and the learning of, not having to be go every 10 minutes, working smarter versus harder. You don't hear a lot of people talking about that. It's something I've learned over the years, is because I was a, sleep 3 hours a night, literally kind of guy for over a decade. And so I'd love to hear your story about what that was like, that lessons that you learned. And
yeah, well, I think the biggest lesson for me that I learned was the universe always sends you signs, and quite often we don't hear them. And, you'll get a nudge, you'll get a little nudge, and then you'll get a louder nudge. And the big, the bitch slap for me was I was out cycling, I got hit by a car, and I broke my tailbone. So that was the universe literally going, Kim, you need to sit on your ass, you need to get grounded. And I didn't listen to the other messages beforehand. So the biggest thing for me was probably getting hit by a car. And the reason why I was out cycling was because I watched this documentary and followed exactly what you say. They go out there, I watched this documentary called Iron Mind, and it was all about how, all the greats, Dorian Yates, John Joseph, Dave Goggins, all of those guys, phenomenal, documentary. It's all about how we only tap into 40% of the human brain capacity. So I was like, on there, they went and started training for this Ironman, and I was like, well, I can do that too, So that's why I was out. I decided, never done a triathlon or anything in my life, and decided I'd sign up for a half Ironman because that's what everyone tells you to do in the the business and personal development world. It's always you got to go the next level. And so one thing I've learned is I probably don't need to do a half Ironman at this point in my life. I can probably do something else. And so one of the lessons that came with that, speaking to what you were talking about, was all these influencers tell you, you've got to have a morning routine, and you've got to, drink green smoothies and meditate, and you got to wake up at 4 a.m. and, you got to do all these things, read 10 pages of a book every day. And, the list goes on. Depending on who you speak to will be dependent on what that list is. And I have lived by that, or I've done my best to be disciplined enough to live by that for a number of years. But what I came to realize is that when I was performing at my best, it wasn't when I was doing all of those things. In fact, when I was doing all of those things, I was probably performing at my worst. I don't know if you've heard Simon Sinek talk about the lark and the owl, and you talked about, you were 3 hours sleep. I've always been someone who's worked better at night. I call it my intuition hours between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. in the morning. And trying to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning, it's just not in my DNA to do that. Prior to the last couple of years, actually, now all of a sudden it's interesting how my body clock has switched across. But when I just surrendered to my own process and said, what are the important things that Kim Burke needs to do every day in order for me to perform at my best? And one thing I don't think we do enough is listening to the communication that our body is giving us. And the last 2 years for me has been a very reconnection, I say that I've re-embodied with my body in the sense of being able to hear the messages of what my body's telling me, which previously I was just pushing down. And so for me, I have found, okay, great, let's look at the list of what they suggest you're supposed to do. But when I look at a lot of people who have legitimately got the lifestyle that I want, and I'm not talking about, the richest billionaires in the world, because I think there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. And, for me, rich means you've got a lot of money, but wealth means you've got enough money and a lot of freedom to do what you want with it. And so for me, I realized I was chasing the dollars, and not realizing that there was a balance in life that that's what I was really looking for. And to be able to have that freedom, but still have the capability to, to generate sufficient abundance in my life, I think that came from getting clarity on what was best for me. And I think a lot of people can learn a lot from that in saying, okay, well, all these influencers say, here are the rules to the game, but I don't think it's one size fits all. And hand on heart, I could probably say it's taken me 20 years, maybe 23 years to work out that in order for me to be successful, I don't actually have to follow, step 1 to step 10. It's like, okay, great. They're saying that these are, some of the things that you can do, but what really works for me. So that was a huge realization, because I'd programmed myself for so long. You read a book or you listen to a podcast and they say, this is what you need to do. But I don't think we question enough, how does that actually translate to me with where I'm at in my journey? Because you read the book, you listen to the podcast, you see something on Instagram and you instantly go, oh, they have what I want. But where I'm at and where they're at are two completely different places. So that's been a big unlearning for me. You know, I don't wake up at 4 a.m. I don't, you know, I don't always meditate when I first wake up. I do meditate, but I don't, you know, it's not a constant routine. The biggest thing that's been a game changer for me, and is definitely a daily discipline now, I have a gratitude diary that every night before I go to bed, before I switch my lamp off on the side of my bed, I write in the gratitude journal, what are the things that I'm grateful for today? And what I've come to realize is that what my perception of gratitude was previously versus what gratitude really is to me is two different things. And I think gratitude is also another thing that people go, you know, oh, you need gratitude. But when I sit and write in that gratitude diary every night, it's like, you know, I'll say, I'm so grateful for, like, I was thinking about it earlier when we were sitting here. I'm so grateful for my dog Lulu. You know, she came up onto the couch and she came up and she just wanted to give me a little nudge, you know, while I was sitting on the couch tonight. And I was like, that's such a powerful moment of connection, which I don't think we put enough value on those moments of grace. And tonight I went out and there was this incredible sunset out on my back deck in the clouds. We've had a storm here. And I just took a moment to stand and look at the beauty of the colors and the clouds. Whereas before I would never have noticed, the sunset, or unless I was down at the beach or something like that. So I think it's, that piece of gratitude has been a really big game changer for me. And I just unpacked all the other stuff I had in my life and asked myself, what are the things that actually fill me up and bring me joy every day? Versus what are the, I've switched from I get to do this instead of I have to do that. I used to wake up and I was in I have to do the green smoothie. I have to do the meditation. I have to read 10 pages. And now it's like, no, I actually get to do that. I get to go to the gym and work out.
So curious, like, I mean, you've talked about a lot of things here and it's amazing. And one of the things that I think is a little bit, counterintuitive to what we hear from influencers is, they're talking about grinding it out and taking yourself to the next level. And then you're talking about, hey, I needed to slow down. Now, in fairness, you were uber successful in real estate in the mid 2000s. Mm-hmm. And then of course, 2008, 2009 hits, struggles there, and then, but you are, to me, badass. I said it in the beginning, you're a badass. And you kind of, what I was taking from your whole conversation was like, you were here, you were there, you've done so many things, you reinvent yourself, you become a super successful currency trader. And you're traveling the world, and I think maybe part of that currency trading was, hey, I'm going to travel the world, so I got to figure out how I can still make money and travel the world. And, you just created, this, superpower woman in the currency trading industry and are uber successful there. So self-motivation and drive is not your downside, right? That's not where you struggle. That's like the instant natural response for you. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is that, like, as you were talking, I was really, what hit me was, evolution. How do you evolve as a person from where you are to where you want to be? And part of the big difficulty is that most people don't know where they are. And so, I come across so many people that when I talk to them and they struggle with, well, I want to be here, and they actually don't even know where they are. So they have this, like, kind of internal struggle that they're facing, and they don't really know where it is or what it is. And it sounded to me earlier like you had kind of alluded to, you didn't really know exactly how stressed out your body was with the travel. You were talking about, the hormones. Instantly, I'm thinking like such a buildup of cortisol inside your system that tosses off your hormones. For women, that's, an instant, I don't think people really understand how much you can, take your body out of its hormonal state. And for women, it's a death kiss. And they're blind to it. So, and then, so you've got that playing around, and then you've got your own thing, and then, and then we build up a story about where our life is and all that kind of stuff. So if we just, I'm really curious if you just kind of nutshelled in that specific time where you were coming through this realization of, I didn't really know that I was that stressed. What was the one insight, the one thing that triggered you to go, oh shit? If you could, I don't know if you can recall that.
It's a really great question, actually. I honestly think for me, it was the struggle that I had when I physically had to stop. So when I got hit by the car and I physically couldn't keep going, I think that's when I really got the insight. I was like, oh, I need to be able to do things differently because I couldn't physically move. So, and I think that physical restriction made me look at my emotional, intellectual, the way that I was just functioning as a human being. I think that's just really what made me go, I really need to look at this very differently from a different perspective.
So that's awesome. And then in addition to the question, so here would be the follow-up question to that is, I'm a big believer in we make shifts based on the questions that we ask ourselves. Ask yourself a disempowering question, and you're going to continually get a disempowering answer. Change your question to an empowering question, and it changes the whole game. So I'm curious, is there anywhere in there that you could identify, okay, you get into a car accident, you're on your ass, literally, tailbone, and you're sitting there, on the couch kind of healing. Is there a shift in question, or what was the shift in mindset or story that you're sitting there telling yourself that created? Because I think this is where most people get stuck, in that they don't know how to reframe the thinking, and something tragic like an accident has to occur. You got to get sick, or you got to have somebody in your family have an illness or something to maybe stop and go, oh, wow, maybe there's a different way here.
Yeah.
Or you have to wake up in a car, or on the street, broke with no money, etc. It could go the other way too, right? So I'm just curious, what was the shift, if you could relate it?
When you talk about the questions, I think one of the main questions or primary questions that at that point in time I was asking myself, because I found it very difficult to do what I was told to do, which was you can't do anything. And that was a struggle for me.
I could just imagine.
Yeah, I was like, can I swim? No, anything does not include swimming. Okay, and my brain was just kept going to, well, what about if I do this? Or what about, can I lift like upper body weights? Like, what about arm weight? Can I? No. Like, the answer was just no, Kim. So the question that I kept asking myself is, how can I surrender to this process? How can I surrender to? And then the second thing was, because of my personality type, I'm all about getting to the result and the outcome. But unless I'm having fun doing it, I didn't, I'm not there. So my question to myself was, how can I surrender to the process and have fun along the way? And my mind was like, literally, you can't do anything. How on earth is that going to be fun? So then I had to get creative around, okay, how can I surrender and be in complete radical acceptance that, I physically cannot move at the moment. And how can I make it fun? Like, how can I turn this situation into a fun scenario? So that was the challenge that I set myself, because, of course, Kim Burke always needs a challenge. Although that's changed a little bit these days too. So So that, I don't know, I don't know where that came from, to be honest, but it was like, I know I need to surrender, but I was like, I don't really know how to do surrender. So then it was like, oh, this is a new experience, and how can I make that process fun? So I think that's where I started from.
Yeah, and so that's the new challenge, right? The new challenge was surrendering. Surrendering is hard for somebody who's kicking ass all the time, right? It's like, and so making that shift, and that's, I think, sometimes why you see in professional athletes, they struggle so much, they go off the deep end when they go to retire, because they lose their identity. Ultimately, like, that's kind of at the core. It's like, well, I can't do anything, and then there's a switch in identity. So who I was before, I can no longer be. Now, how do I reinvent myself and create a new identity? And so, would that be fair to say? Is that kind of what?
Yeah, happened? I mean, absolute. That's a parallel for me. I'm not an elite athlete, but that was definitely the same thing. It was like, well, I can't go out and be the Amazon woman that I'm used to being, and doing all the things. But that's obviously what I needed at that point in time, and there was nowhere in the business world, or in the personal development courses or the books or anything that I'd done in my growth and evolution journey, other than maybe through yoga. But nowhere did they teach you about surrendering and how powerful, that whole surrender, stop, stillness was. So then I think in a way that became a superpower for me. It was like, oh, okay, this is actually fun. And that the one thing that I think that I got from the surrender process was the mental clarity. And like the brain fog and all of those sorts of things disappeared, because obviously I wasn't, as you mentioned, pumping as much cortisol. I wasn't thinking as much. I wasn't in that go mode. So I think naturally it just became a fun process. So, but yeah, it's the same. I think it's the same for whether you're an elite athlete, whether you're a high performance business person. I don't think that we do stop enough to just take some time. It's all about, everything that we're taught is about going to the next level and going to the next level. And what have you got to do to get to that next level? But I don't think that we stop enough to reflect, assess, and just take a moment to just be. We're so busy doing that we don't take a moment to stop and just be. But I think that's really where that next level of progression can come from. Certainly that's been my experience from what life has delivered me in the past couple of years.
Yeah, you never buy a personal help book and chapter 13 is do less, sit on the couch, take your time, wake up late. I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about it. I found it myself, having a little bit of settledness in your life. I mean, I don't take any meetings before 10 a.m. anymore. I picked that up from a buddy of mine. It was the best thing that I ever did. Like, I think I started that maybe 2 years ago now. And I mean, obviously I'll break the rule on occasion, but I don't take a meeting before 10. I was always the kind of guy who was like, I got to find a company in Europe so I can get up at 5 a.m. and fucking have meetings. But I think also, and I'll say this, anybody listening, I think first you have to identify where you are. I mean, you were at the stage where, your ass was on fire, like you were everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so you needed to settle down. There are probably some people that have to identify where they are and they're maybe not doing enough. And, they do need to get either up earlier or create a more regimented system around, their daily routines or practices in order to develop that muscle that you have to create in order to create a shift. But whichever way you're going, the principle's the same. It's identifying, where am I? Where do I want to be? And that that's a whole difficult process.
Yeah.
And so you had to explore that too, right? So we've only gotten to the point where you kind of had the epiphany of, hey, I need to slow down. And there was an outside, accident. Probably there was, like you said, there was lessons. And then I think you bitch slap across the face was the accident. But everybody, so many people walk around, they have bad shit happening to them and they think it's just bad shit. And they don't realize, like, there's a lesson. There's a lesson in everything. You know, there's a lesson in what your kids are teaching you. There's a lesson in what you're getting from your employees. Like, just because or from your boss or from whatever, the neighbor. There's lessons around us all the time. We just don't see them or we're not aware of them because we're so sucked up in our whole life about what we got to do, what we have to accomplish, or what is bothering us, and our mind gets too busy to really see what grace or the universe or nature is providing us in the moment. So you kind of get to that point, and then how do you kind of redefine?
Yeah, I think what you're just talking about there is having an awareness, and I think that that's something that is lacking. You know, that self-awareness for people is lacking. So where did I get to? Well, I had to become very self-aware, especially when you can't move for a while. You become very self-aware with what's happening around you. So yeah, I mean, I think for me, just taking the time also to, you spoke earlier about the quality of the questions. One of the things that I sat with while I was sitting on the couch with a blow-up donut strapped to my butt because I had a broken tailbone, so I couldn't sit down, so I'd have an inflatable on there, was...
I could see that.
Yeah, I've still got it. It's a purple ring. It's like a trophy.
Bring it to Canada next time.
Yeah, you throw me behind the boat on my on my tailbone tube. On my donut. I'll sit on the plane with it. One of the real things that I got to when I got to the point of surrender was, who am I? And you know, who am I? Well, I'm Kim Burke. I'm Kim Burke, the entrepreneur. I'm Kim Burke, the trader. I'm this and I'm that. But I was like, who really am I? Like, who really am I? It's like, because one of the things that I think being in business, being an entrepreneur, and making money can do is, I think you can get lost in the process. And I certainly can put my hand up and say that looking back now and reflecting, I definitely got lost in that process. And I think that, you know, our ego is designed to protect us, but it's also designed to push us. And a lot of what we're taught, especially from these influencers, like, you know, you open up Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or Twitter or whichever platform you're on these days, but everything that I see is all, like, it's all just, there's very few people around. I shouldn't say everything, because there's very few people around that their posts are not egotistically driven. And I realized, I was like, damn, I got caught in this virus. I got caught in the ego-driven go virus. And so part of my journey from that pivotal point of surrender was to say, well, who am I? Like, who really am I? And without the business, without the status, without the money, without the materialism, who am I? And I think if you can work out who you are without all of that, then you know the direction that you need to go in. And that wasn't an overnight process for me. It was actually because for so long, as you mentioned, linking an identity to a particular outcome, I had linked a certain identity and perception of who I thought I was, but also what those things gave me, you know, so like security as an example, or so in that process for me, it was all about the discovery of who I really was underneath all of those things. And I think the grounding or not being able to move really gave me an opportunity to connect with that. So I think something that's important for everyone, regardless of where you're at in your journey, whether you're at the start, you're in the beginning, you know, maybe you've had to start again, maybe you've made it big time. I think one of the most important things is to know, who are you? Like, who really are you? And so that became a really interesting journey for me to sit down and work out, well, who really am I? And so
a lot of people don't want to know the answer to that question. Right? I mean, you're going to like some of it, you're not going to like some of it, but but so it's interesting, like one of the three archetypical saboteurs is the path of least resistance, which is basically, you'll try something new, but you eventually will revert back to what is normal. So for people who are struggling to, drive success in their life, and when I say success, I'm not meaning money.
Yeah.
That's probably the least, to me, that's the least level of success measurement. I mean, it's the one most commonly used because it's easier. And not that I don't use it, I do use it, fairly frequently, but I just don't think it's the most important thing. I mean, I say to my kids all the time, it's like, guys, look around, like we're renting this shit, when I go, it's gone. Like I'm just using it like props in a movie, but we don't own anything. We're just using it while we're here. And so, but whether it's you're pursuing success in your relationship, whether you're pursuing success in business, in your job, in your philanthropy, in your church, whatever, that path of least resistance, you'll step out of your comfort zone, push a little bit, but then you revert back. So for you, but on the flip side for you is like you're ass kicker extraordinaire. And so now you're trying to slow down. Was there a struggle where you're like, you had this part of your identity is like, I was put on this earth to kick ass and take names. And I'm trying to, it's like you're like trying to slow down a team of horses, for fuck's sakes. I mean, I've known you for a long time. I can imagine what was kind of going on, but I'm curious if you could just kind of jump on that a little bit.
Yeah. And, again, another great question. That's been a real challenge. Like, I'd be lying if I didn't say otherwise. And it's been this internal, emotional and, intellectual struggle more than anything else. Once I got past the physical struggle of being able to move again, it's interesting because once I got past the struggle of being able to move again, I now move in a completely different way. So physically, I'm now moving in a completely different way. And I feel like the whole anatomy and structure of my body has also changed, which I don't think is just, hey, I had to rehab and, rebuild certain particular muscle groups. I also think it's a whole biological shift that happened with, the hormones of cortisol, the adrenaline, all of that. And it's also to the body, mind, soul reconnect after having that physical grounding. So, in answer to your question, it's been a real challenge for me to, to get the pack of horses to slow down. And it's funny how the mind works because it's like, you'll go, okay, yeah, I'm going to slow down, but then you'll cheat yourself. And, one of our mutual mentors had this saying, to put rules in place to protect me from me. And so I caught myself. It was like, I go, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm gonna slow down. I'm gonna do these things differently. But then it'd kind of like creep in out the side. So I had to have this real awareness of why am I going when I know now that that's not serving me in my, it's not in my highest and best interest. What's behind the need and the desire to constantly, want to let the horses get back out on the track and go like a bat out of hell. And so I really had to get present with what's the driving force behind why I feel like I need to do that. And then lots of how can I questions. How can I achieve my outcome with the skills and talents that I've acquired over a long period of time? How can I take what I've got and do things differently?
Sorry, before you sorry to interrupt, but what was the driving force for you? At its core, what did you feel the driving force was of really wanting to get the horses back on the track?
So for me, the primary driving force that I came up with was, for me, it was all about security. So as you know, I'm 43 years old. I'm single on my own. My biological family doesn't exist. So for me, it's me, myself, and my dog Lulu. So for me, my driving force was that security of knowing, that I'm going to be okay when I'm, I do hold out hope that, my Mr. Right is either the one that I'm currently has in my life or maybe, someone else. So I'm like, but if I get to 75 or 80 years old, and I'm still single and by myself, what security do I have to live the life that I desire? So I realized that security was what was driving me to go was wanting the security of being able to provide for myself, basically. And so then there was kind of sub-driving forces behind that. But then I had to say to myself, well, how can I provide security for myself in a way that doesn't, let the horses out of the gate or beat myself senseless from a physical perspective. And so shifting my perspective around what's the skills and talents that I've got and how can I create that security, and also too, specifically, what does that security look like? Like, I know I'm chasing security, but what's the security that I'm chasing? Is there a dollar value? Is there an asset acquisition value? Is there what specifically is that security? And I don't think I'd ever really kind of sat down because I was just so focused on the go.
Was it just money, or was there other factors other than was it you're single? So is that why you're traveling the world everywhere to find a guy?
I think I was traveling the world in complete honesty. I think travel became an escape for me and it met my needs. So when we talk about, the 6 human needs, because I am single, the travel gave me the love and connection that my love and connection bucket was filled up by the travel because, you guys are my global friends too. I have global family all around the world. And while I have beautiful friends back here on the Gold Coast, it's not the same kind of connections that I have internationally. So for me, I was always traveling to get that hit of the love and connection that my global family gave me, and also the adventure and, the variety, the uncertainty, because didn't know which, always booked one-way tickets. So I realized that whilst traveling was meeting some of my needs, it was also depriving me of, getting focused on really what it was that I was looking for. So, so the travel, I think, was a little bit of a distraction in a way. It was taking me away from what I was actually needing to focus on. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but
no, for sure it does. Yes. Go ahead.
No, you're right. You go ahead. I don't know if I answered that question.
It's a great distinction in terms of on the travel side. So on the security side, back home, you identify money, but was there other things outside of that in the security side of it?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things for me in security, not having my biological family around me, it was connections, like true, authentic, integral connections. And that's something that I've always worked really hard for. My connection with you and Tanil is a great example. We've been friends for over a decade, and even though we're 1,000 miles away on the other side of the world, cultivating connections, I actually feel like that's the next currency that we're moving into. And I feel like COVID and this time has really proven how important connection is. So for me, the security, not only, obviously the security primarily was financial, but the other part of the security for me was connections. And being grounded and being at home has allowed me to go deeper in the connections that I've got, because previously I realized, and for any of my friends who are listening to this, I apologize for not being present, because if, you know, for those who have known me for the past 10 years, I was always on the go. And not that I didn't get back to my friends or anything like that, but I didn't bring enough, I don't feel that I brought enough presence to my, I don't, not so much I don't like the word relationship, because, you know, the beginning of it says relate, and I just don't want to relate to people. I want to connect with them. So I have replaced that word with connectionships. It's like I want to have that deep level of connection with people. And so I realized that, you know, I wasn't bringing that level of presence to those connections. So for me, I actually think those, like, connection brings a higher level of security for me now over monetary security. And that's been a big shift for me too.
Congratulations. That's amazing. It's beautiful. I love the connection piece and I love the word, you know, that you use, presence. I think it's critical. It's, you know, it's something I've learned a lot about, you know, because, you know, I was in a lot of places at a lot of times, you know, burned through one marriage. And then on the second marriage, you know, it's one of the things that I've learned is I'm a talker. So I'll want to talk stuff out. And a lot of times I think it's just the fact that being present for Tennille is more important than actually saying or doing anything. I never understood couples, especially older couples, you know, who would just sit at a table and read the paper. One's reading the paper here and the other one's reading the paper there. And that's probably dating. Well, they're older. So, or they're reading their iPads or whatever. And you're like, what kind of relationship is that? And I can find as much joy being present, sitting on the couch. You know, Tennille and I will sit at the island at night. We do a lot of work at night, and we'll sit at the island. She'll be on her laptop and I'll be on my laptop, and we'll work, and we'll just, you know, back and forth, talk a little bit, work, you know, and just being present in the environment together makes all the difference in the world.
Massive, huge.
Yeah. It's a cool distinction there.
Yeah. And technology has taught us to do the opposite. You know, like, everyone's so engaged on their devices and stuff. It's like being present is a gift now. Bringing your presence, you know, you don't need to give someone a gift. You just give them the gift of your presence. It's, you know, it's so important. So I have written on my mirror in my bathroom 3 words that I look at, you know, every morning and every night. And I think I shared this with you actually in one of our calls, is that, you know, I do the best that I can every day to show up and live my life from a place of curiosity, presence, and grace. So, you know, I always want to remain curious, be present wherever I am, you know, whether it's being here on a podcast, whether I'm at the checkout at the supermarket and the checkout chick's, you know, saying, you know, how was your day, whatever, instead of being on my mobile phone while she's trying to talk to me. She might only be the checkout chick, but that's still being present. And obviously also living from a grace, there's 4, curiosity, presence, grace, and humility. I think humility is probably the biggest word that over the past couple of years that I've really reconnected with, is coming from a place of humility. Being super grateful. I mean, I've been so incredibly blessed to live an extraordinary life, crazy life, but an extraordinary life. And so having humility around even just the simple things in life, I think we've missed that along the way too. So, yeah.
What brought you to that? Because I'm sure they weren't like that. Were they like that 2 years ago?
No, they were more like focus, discipline, consistency, you know. They were all like, go hard or go home, you know, like,
yeah, fucking kill it. What's the new term now? Love the suck or embrace the suck or whatever it is now.
I don't know. Yeah. I'm out of touch. Yeah. I'm out of touch with what's here. But no, I think, you know, I used to always, I had a label for myself, since I was very young in my late teens up until now, all my friends went to university and they all got these letters after their name on their email signature. You know, they had like a PhD or an MBA or a, you know, whatever was after their name with their little classification. And I felt like, you know, the black sheep, the odd one out, because I didn't have a classification. So I thought, where's the classification police? Like, who polices the letters that you put after your name on your email signature or on your business card? And I thought, you know what? There's no acronyms police, so I'm just going to make up my own. So I made up MIHQ and I put that on my email, and people used to always say to me, what degree is that? And I said, oh, that's the Make It Happen Queen. So that was my qualification. And I wish I had $1 for every time someone asked me what that degree was. I'd be, you know, I would have made $1 million out of it. But so the shift there, in answer to your question, was I've gone from being the MIHQ to the LIHQ. So I went from being the Make It Happen Queen to the Let It Happen Queen. And there was a great analogy that I read in a book called The 3 Simple Steps by Trevor Blake. And he used the analogy of the warrior and the magician. So throughout my life, you know, a warrior is like the wah, 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 you know, go get the job done, like focus, grind, all of that stuff. Whereas the magician, it just sits there and, you know, swings the wand and lets the magic come to them. So I think the shift for me is I've gone from warrior to magician, from make it happen to let it happen. And I think that surrender is a big part of that. So,
I mean, I 1000% agree with you. I've talked to many people in business about that, is like the shift of, I used to go chase fucking everything. Like, I was
opportunity.
Yeah. I've owned 30 businesses in 15 different industries, over 30 businesses. And so like, I'm like a junkie. So I'm always chasing it, but you get to the point where you learn that. So you spoke about this need for certainty, mm-hmm. and security. I think you used the word security. And then now you're like the let it happen queen versus the make it happen queen. But there's got to be a shift there that's got to happen, that has got to be uncomfortable.
Very.
So what'd you go through?
I'm still in full transparency. I'm still going through it.
Good. Well, I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear the story, because that's, I think, what everybody's going through something, mm-hmm. and or they need to go through something and they resist it, or they fear the other side of it because it's change and it's new. And so then they want to stay the same, or they end up staying the same. I'm curious, like, if you're in the middle of it, it would be awesome to hear what that is, and, you know, what's the struggle? What's the up and downs in it?
Yeah, I think definitely for me, my ego was my protection mechanism. And the one thing that I think has kept me, had kept me growing and progressing and evolving in my life was, you know, I had the ability to, like you, there was like, oh, there's an opportunity. Yes, I'm going to do that. And one of the things that served me very well early on was my ability, you know, I mean, I've done a lot in my life. I've been a firefighter. I've had a mortgage brokerage. I've done real estate. I've had a recruitment agency. I've been in the travel space. I've traded. So I had a whole bunch of different skills, right? And some of those, so one of my skills that served me well for a period of time was my ability to just jump and work out how to open the parachute on the way down. And I didn't so much have a sense of fear, and I didn't so much have a sense of not failure, but I wasn't worried about the consequences. So maybe maturity has caught up with me. Maybe burnout was a little bit associated with that too. But I really feel like I think perspective is really the thing that got me to to flick the switch. And I don't think there was one, I don't think there was one moment in time. I think it was a series of combination of different events that led to the catalyst of change. But it was this whole realizing that, I feel like realizing that my ego was driving me in a way that was no longer serving me. And that I didn't need to prove to anyone that, I could continue to be good. The one thing I struggle with a little bit in my life is I know I've been good at a number of things, but I don't feel like I've ever been great at something. And so I said to myself, what's something that I really want to get great at? And so getting great at one particular thing required me to not engage in so many other things. And so trading has brought so much to my life, not just in a financial sense, but it's taught me so much about myself, because, trading really is just you against you. It's not you against the market. And so I've learned so much about myself in that journey and in that process. And so I think I just said, it's time to pull all of my talents. What would my life look like if I just remained focused on just one thing without getting distracted on all the other things, and without the need for external recognition and external validation? Because in the environments that I've been in, I've been externally recognized quite often. And I just realized that wasn't really serving my desired outcome. It wasn't getting me to where I wanted to go in order to connect with my true authentic self. I'm not sure if that makes any sense or if I'm explaining that correctly.
No, it does. I guess the question I would ask there is where did you want to get to? Like, what was your desired outcome?
Yeah, so I thought my desired outcome was going to be one of the things that you learn in all of the personal development books, which is, help enough other people get what they want, and then you'll get what you want. And so my mission was, I want to change 1 million lives, and I want to, do all of these things, and I want to acquire this much money and this much wealth, and, do this and do that. And then I realized that I actually can have a greater impact just on a one-on-one basis. Dropping a little golden nugget to the checkout chick as I'm scanning my groceries, or, helping a girl at my local yoga studio, or I didn't need to be out there doing those out there things to have the desired impact. And so being able to see the impact that I have on a one-on-one basis, I started to feel a lot deeper sense of fulfillment than chasing this larger, the perception of I had to do these big things. And one of the biggest realizations I've had, and I don't want this to be taken out of context, like Zig Ziglar says, help enough other people get what they want, and then you'll get what you want in return. What I realized in that scenario for me personally was I was giving so much of myself out. I had no boundaries about where my energy, where my time, where my intellect, where my resources were going, that I was giving so much out, there was nothing left of me. So I realized, well, actually, no, I need to take that energy and pour it back into myself, because then I can be of higher value and have a greater impact. And so it really made me question, we're trained on this belief of, help enough other people, but what happens if we helped ourselves? What happens if we poured back into ourselves and became the best version of our true authentic self that we could be? So I think that's the catalyst of change. The past 2 years for me has been all about pouring back into me. And it's been this like this, woo, like I'm challenged all the time by Kim. That's so selfish. And then I'm like, no, but you need to go within to pour that energy back in, so as you've got more to pour back out. And then it's like, no, you need to get back out there. You need to go and help these people. But what life and energy keeps teaching me is that the more that I just, willy-nilly just pour out energy, the less that I can grow and evolve and get to where I believe my gifts and what my purpose is, this time around. And so I've really changed my perception on that. It's not, help enough other people. It's not being a selfish thing. It's help yourself enough to get you to the level that you need to be, where you can give on a level that has an impact, rather than just throwing crumbs here, there, and everywhere. So I think that's been a really big thing for me, and that's been a real struggle, because it's like, stop being selfish, and then it's like, well, I'm not being selfish, I'm just pouring back into myself. But then nowhere out there does it say on those success lists, pouring into yourself is actually a number one priority. Everything's about giving to everyone else and having an impact out there. So through my journey of burnout and overdoing it, I've come to realize that pouring into yourself is actually a very, very critical part of the journey to success.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, because I've been thinking a lot about, especially with this podcast, that if the only way to be successful, many people think that like success is measured if I'm in a magazine, or if I'm on TV, or if I've made $1 billion, or it's like nobody talks if like, oh, if I make $1 million, it's a fucking $1 billion. Do people really realize like what $1 billion is? And I have friends who are like, yeah, I help 1 billion people, and it's like 1 billion people. That's 1/8 of the population of the entire planet. Like,
yep.
They just throw these things out, and I think it's been so exasperated by social media and these visions of, look, it's great to have a goal, and I'm all for that. I don't take that away, but I do believe, just imagine what this planet would look like if everyone just spent a little bit more time on themselves, to create what I think how you phrased it was, become your true authentic self. If we were really all in a state of our true authentic self, nobody would have to go out and fix a fucking billion people. It's really about people fixing themselves. And so I really commend you on that. And I feel like that is a journey that I've kind of been on a little bit too. And ego, my ego has gotten in the way of that, or significance, that need for significance. You talked earlier about, people who are posting, on Facebook or whatever they're called, Twitter. I have Instagram and I have a Facebook account. I haven't been on my Facebook account in years, and I use it, and I send some stuff out to motivational stuff out on Instagram to a few friends. But you see these people posting, what they had for dinner or what they're eating for dinner. It's like, who gives a fuck what you're having for dinner? Do you really think that your life is that important that 200 people need to see what you're eating for dinner? Like, to me, that is a post, and this is probably a bit of a judgment. People will call it connection, but to me, that's not connection. It's, or the relationships.
It's a challenge on social media. People say, I'm an influencer. I love when someone says that. I go, oh, who do you influence? Like, what do you influence? Just because you've got 1 million followers or 3 million followers or like whatever, what influence are you having? It's like, what, someone's paying you to take a picture with a pair of tracksuit pants on or a protein shake in your hand. That's not influence. You're an advertiser. Like, we have to get really clear on language these days.
Call
because,
a spade a spade. Like it's marketing.
yeah, let's be real.
Yeah,
You're not influencing shit.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I had to slam my head in the door about 16 times to get myself through the concept of launching a podcast, because it's like, this is so anti what I really am about. I mean, I don't think there is no post on the, I'm going to say there's no post on the planet that I've made on any social media where I'm taking a picture or done a video of, and I have done some pretty outrageous shit in my life.
Cool things. Yeah.
Very cool things. I've done, like, from, very stupid things in my early days to some really cool shit. And there's not a post on the planet. I mean, I don't think anybody could find anything. There's one picture that I had on the internet from a bodybuilding competition I did, 30 years ago or some stuff like that. And that I had ripped down. Like, I'm anti that stuff. And then now I launch a podcast, so I don't know how that really works, but
I think it comes down to
all I'm trying to do is have just authentic conversations. And if it helps somebody, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. If nobody listens or watches this podcast, I'll be quite fine, because I'm having an awesome conversation with an incredibly intelligent, woman that has accomplished a ton of shit and is still going through, you're still grinding it out. You're still going through transition. And I hope that never ends too. Right. So it would never should end.
Thank you.
Yeah,
no.
Most people think, like, the biggest problem that most people have is they think they shouldn't have any problems. They shouldn't. They think they shouldn't go through this shit. It's like, yeah, you should go through this shit every day, because if you're not going through it, you're either dead, physically dead, or you're emotionally dead. Like, there has got to be some type of pressure that we push against ourselves. And it doesn't have to be go out and do a triathlon or run 1,000,000 miles or lift 1,000 pounds or make $1 billion in the movie industry or anything like that. It can be just, the struggle of becoming a better father or mother, or being a better husband or wife, or, being a better employer or a better employee, or a better neighbor, or a better, person in a church group, or I'm sure there's more of a professional name for that, but
yeah. And I think it all comes down to intent. What's your intention behind what you're doing? You're not doing this podcast to get followers or to put a post up on Instagram. Your intention behind doing this is to add value. And it's like, I have a social media account, and yeah, I do post pictures on there, but my intent is to be the message that I bring. I'm not posting, I'm posting messages of, like, I believe that part of my, my passion in life is I love making money. I don't make any excuses for that. But my purpose in life is to help people find their inner greatness, and to be an example of possibility on what living an extraordinary life is. And so for me, my message is always around, I hope that I impart, my intention is to inspire and to show people what is possible, like what's a possibility. So I think as long as you're connected with your intention, and you remain true to that, yeah, we get bumped off sometimes, but we're only human. So I think, yeah, as long as you're clear on what your intent is, and as long as, it's pure and it can add value to everyone, then yeah, I don't think the medium or the delivery really matters, as long as you've got a pure intent.
Well, yeah. So I think you said, was it clear, pure, and good intentions? And I think that's where people get struggled with, right? It's because, they're posting things that are not necessarily, fit into that category. They're posted because it makes them feel good and significant. And that ultimately is kind of the things that derail people from getting where they really want to be, because their focus
need to go, yeah.
Yeah, they just get this focus in it, and it's not. it's not criticism. It's just an opportunity for growth, right? It's an opportunity that if they can kind of see that, hey, I'm maybe not doing this to serve others. I'm maybe doing this to serve myself, or to make myself feel good, or to make myself feel important. And everybody should feel important. Everybody should feel significant. But how you do it, you can do it in a disempowering way, and you can do it in an empowering way, or you can do it in a way that just doesn't, just consumes people's time, energy, and focus, which I'm huge at protecting those three things. It's almost all I talk about with my executive team now: time, energy, focus. Those are the three things, and money is not in that. You'll notice, like if you manage those things, lots of balance will become, start to incur in your life, and you'll see a difference. And I'm constantly preaching that to the executive team is,
Yeah, money's a byproduct of those three things. If you protect your time, energy, and focus, money will flow from that. So yeah,
where are you just out of curiosity, like with this transition that you spoke about, where is the biggest struggle currently?
Currently the biggest struggle is how to manage my attention and focus, and also how to manage my attention and focus and to channel my talents and my gifts and my skills in a way. I think for me it's a little bit differently because I'm a trader, and I'm also very much a people person. Trading can become quite a lonely process, or a lonely career choice. And so for me the struggle is sitting with kind of what's next, in the sense of, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Do I want to move, like, geographically? Do I want to move overseas? And so I'm constantly having to check myself now and say, Kim, this is the trust piece. This is the trusting and the being again. I'm got that itchy feet to get up and go travel, and, to go back out into the world and to go and someone's like,
the horses are in the trailers, ladies and gentlemen, and they're on the way to the track.
Yep, calm the farm, girlfriend. And I think because I've been taking some small trips down to Melbourne frequently, and I got a little touch of the city vibe, and I'm like, oh yeah, back in the corporate. And then I'm like, and then I come home, and then it's like my higher self talks to me and says, no, Kim, we don't do that anymore. So my struggle at the moment is really, I've got some incredibly exciting things going on, and things that I never thought that would, come my way. And so it's like I've spent a lot of time in the past 12 months focusing on that. And now I think the struggle for me is managing the old pattern. I feel like the old pattern of, it's time to travel. It's time to, to hit the sky again. And how do I implement my growth and not fall back into old patterns that cause me to, because I believe travel is food for the soul for anyone. When you put yourself in a new environment, you learn new things, you speak to new people, you get new connections. Definitely need to do that.
Yep.
But not falling back into that old pattern. And part of it too is chemical. It's like you want the dopamine hit, you want the feeling of, what it used to be. It's exciting. It's, it's new. It's, so for me, I think that's really the struggle at the moment is going, don't fall back into that same pattern. And also too, what do I really want to do? What do I really want to do moving forward? And I think a lot of business people get to this point where, their business gets to a point where it's manageable, and then they go, is it time for me to go look at buying another business, or is it time for me to go find another opportunity? Or, so that's probably my greatest struggle at the moment is what next. And I think because for so long I have relied on my analytical brain to be, it was always, I was relying on using my head versus listening to my heart kind of arrangement, quietening the noise in my head, which is telling me, go, 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 girl, you can, go out into the world and go do this, versus just going, oh no, Kim, life's nice and calm. But then like what you said, Dwayne, it's like when we don't have resistance, we don't grow. So, I mean, I'm challenged in what I'm doing at the moment, but that's my struggle is which direction to go in and what to do. And yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a matter of quality questions, right? I mean, I think it'll. I'm sure it'll come to you. You're super smart, and I'd be curious. What's the question that's going to propel you to the answer that will fulfill you the most, and where do you feel most congruent? And that's. I mean, I think that sometimes, when I'm struggling with that, it's like, I'm struggling or I'm confused about something, which typically means I'm going to learn something. We've heard that before. But I have to really start to find the right question to ask, and I've asked the question, what's next? Like, what's next? It's the worst question. It spins my brain into like a million different things. Well, I could do this. I could do that. I could do this. I could do that. And it's getting really real clarity on what question you want to ask and in order to what you want to get.
Where you want to get to, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some quality questions that I could ask myself, what would life look like in 90 days if I took this option? What would it look like if I took this option? And I think one of the most important questions for me at this junction in my life is what will bring me the most joy, fulfillment, and connection? Because they're the things that ultimately I'm really connected to at the moment, is those three things. So,
right. You are awesome. Thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough. This has been an awesome conversation, and you epitomize. I certainly don't want to make this a feminine thing, but you epitomize, strong, sensitive, feminine woman. I mean, we've known each other, it's 2008, I think. So what are we now? 14 years, coming up 15.
Wow. Yeah.
So I've seen you transition in many ways. You are literally a gift walking this planet, and I'm super grateful to have you here. I love you.
Thank you. And that means a lot to me, given that I think the first time that you guys met me, I probably wasn't that feminine.
We'll tell some stories next time you're on the show. That's the hook for the listeners to come back next time we have you on. Right there. That's it.